For those of you who don't know me, my name is Robert Lowe, and it is my enormous pleasure to welcome all of you to the 2020 LoLo ERBE Colloquium. It falls to me to make some introductory remarks. The first thing I want to do is to acknowledge the unprecedented times in which we meet. This is the first ever fully online colloquium that the CDT has attempted to put on. I therefore ask for your indulgence for things that don't quite work. Michael Keneally and Sean James will be doing their very best to keep the show on the road for us. We're enormously grateful to them for setting us up, getting us this far, and they're doing a great job. We have a wonderful program for you for the next few hours. In particular, we have a really exciting keynote speaker, Brian Motherway from the IEA, in charge of energy demand, which is entirely suitable. Let me now make a few introductory remarks about the energy situation generally. And Michael, if you could move me forward to my next slide. Okay, fantastic. So Michael, if you could move me forward to my next slide. Great stuff. The subtitle here is Some Observations on the Role of ERBE in a Time of Transition. And I want to set the scene here with my next slide, which is an image from a paper that was from a report that was published by the International Applied Systems Organization in Luxembourg, which shows a series of transitions that have taken place over the last 200 years, over the last 150 years when the paper was published. So the first transition is the transition from biomass, which provided almost all energy in the years up to about 1800 globally, to coal. You can see wood steadily declining on the from the top left-hand side of the screen down towards zero in about 2000. I'm not sure we're actually at zero yet. I think it probably undercounts wood even now. We have coal rising. We then, from about 1880 onwards, have oil breaking in as an insurgent technology. And we have from 1870 through to the second half of the 20th century, a transition to oil. Within the space of a few decades, we then have gas supplementing this. And we have natural gas kicking off in the early 1900s and shown here, peaking around now. We then have nuclear, and nuclear is a very interesting case because, of course, the transition to nuclear never really happened. It's possible that it may happen, but it looks extremely doubtful now. There are all sorts of reasons which I don't want to go into now why nuclear never really took off in the same way that coal, oil and gas did. But then we have a fifth transition, which is labeled sulfus, which is, Michael, could we just go back to the previous slide? Just go back to the previous slide. Excellent. Sulfus, which is a term that Marchetti and Nakicenovic coined to describe the combination of solar PV and fusion. And That hasn't really happened either. But if I can now have my next slide, slide 4, what is happening instead is a combination of PV and wind now seems to be growing at an absolutely extraordinary rate globally. And this is shown in blue, superimposed on Marchetti and Nakachenovich's graph. And if we extrapolate recent growth rates, which have been consistently above 25% for wind and PV over the last 2 or 3 decades, then what we're looking at potentially is a transition which will see something like 70% of global primary energy demand supplied by solar and or wind by 2050. Okay, if I can have my next slide, please. So we could spend probably an hour or two going to the reasons for this extremely rapid development. The first thing to say is that solar and wind has now reached a level in excess of 1% of global energy demand, and given the likelihood of a growth coefficient in excess of 20%, it's very hard to see how this particular transition will not unfold along the lines indicated in the previous slide. One of the most important developments of the last few years has been the breakthrough of wind and PV to cost competitiveness with fossil alternatives in most markets across the world. If I can have my last but one slide. As in previous transitions, the architecture of the whole energy system will reorganize itself around the insurgent technology, or in this case, package of technologies, wind and solar. We are likely to see the integration of new auxiliary technologies and vectors over the coming decades, the reintegration of demand and supply systems, the development of regulatory and governance systems to handle new issues that emerge. We will need to provide support for development of supply chains and business models, research and innovation at all levels in the energy system, and we will need continuous measurement and reporting of costs, impacts and performance of the emerging technology packages on the demand and supply side. All of this constitutes an enormous agenda. And if I can have my final slide, Michael. It is our ambition in ERBE to train the research leaders of tomorrow. I hope the last few minutes have indicated to you just how necessary this is going to be. ERBE graduates will be the UK's experts in energy demand, and I hope in wider system issues as well. It will be your task to speed this process of integration and change. So, Michael, I think that's all I want to say at the moment. Guests, as I said at the outset of this little presentation, I'm delighted to welcome all of you to our colloquium, and I will now hand over to our next speaker, Kevin Lomas. Thank you very much.
Perfect. So I'm Michael here, technical support. So just before we go over to Kevin, I will just draw your attention just to some of the housekeeping rules. So please do note, just in the top corner of the screen, you have a live support icon. So if you have any trouble, you can write to us there. There are handouts as well on the right of the screen, so you'll be able to download the colloquium agenda and the booklet as well. So without further ado, finally, there is a Q&A as well if you want to write in that. So without further ado, I'll hand back over to Kevin straight away. Thank you. So Kevin, if you just want to unmute yourself there, please.
can you hear me now? Good. If it falls to me to say a little bit about the activities that have gone on in the LoLo CDT, which is now in its, amazing as it might seem, 11th year. Let's see, there we go. So we have 32 students still working with us and beavering away on their PhDs. We are planning to recruit no more students. We're at the end of our recruitment phases. But the students we do have are continuing to do some great work and inspiring their supervisors, and we hope when their work comes to fruition, we'll be inspiring others in the wider world. And I have to say that we're still very pleased to be enjoying excellent support from our stakeholder community in various areas of energy demand primarily. Each year I show this graph and it illustrates the gradual recruitment of our students and also growing from 2013-14, the bar charts showing the number of PhD successors in each year. As you can see towards the right, recruitment's not rising anymore, but our PhD successors continue. One of the highlights of the year was the student-led conference, now the 7th that our students have organised, and in this year was was called Energy System Innovation for the Low Carbon Future, and was held on the 26th of May. This year, of course, we had to operate within a COVID infested world. And so we ran, or our students ran the conference through MS Teams. The hosts were UCL, and it was their turn this year, and Loughborough students were assisting them. We had a good keynote speaker, Professor Mark Gillett, who spoke about the Trent Basin energy and new homes development. It's particularly interesting and in the light of the ERBE CDT, because PV and PV energy generation is integrated within the housing development, and houses are supplied through a private wire network. Given that we were on Teams, it was easy for others to join in, and remarkably, the students managed to attract over 100 participants from across the world. And these included people from India, Saudi Arabia, Colombia, and of course our new ERBE partners, researchers in Ireland. The students have continued to be productive. We can identify 9 journal articles that have actually been published. There's another 6 which are in progress, and we're very pleased that one of those papers won the paper for the best paper of the year in the journal to which it was submitted. Our students always make themselves widely known to the world through conferences and publishing in conferences, as well as presentations at various workshops, seminars, and so on. This year, a couple of students, actually alumni from LoLo, got together, one from Loughborough and one from UCL, and together they succeeded in winning their own research grant to take work forward. So that was something new and very gratifying. At the bottom, you can see a list of some of the places that our students have been invited to make presentations. I thought I'd finish by just making a comment about COVID-19, and I call it Tales of the Unexpected. Those of you who are old like me will remember the TV program with the same title. Perhaps COVID in some sense gives us a glimpse of the future when we think about energy supply and demand. And the graph here illustrates the price of electricity in 3 countries during lockdown. And you can see that there were a number of times during lockdown when the electricity price went negative. In other words, those using electricity were being paid to take it off the hands of the generators. During lockdown, in general, demand in a number of countries decreased by about 20% by the time you were 10 to 15 days into lockdown. But of course, domestic energy demand, as we might expect, actually went up. So the net reduction is due to reductions in the commercial and business sectors, etc. And the COVID crisis actually coincided with a period of time where it was rather sunny and windy. And so countries with a high renewable proportion had a surfeit of renewable energy, and in some countries, non-renewable generators, which were a bit hard to turn off. And so there were some options available. One was very quickly to build batteries, not entirely plausible. You could pay the companies not to generate, in other words, as Dire Straits would say, money for nothing. Or you could pay people to, as it were, shift the time of when they were using electricity to those times when the price was likely to go negative, and away from those times when the price was higher. This latter point actually points to a future of energy flexibility, which of course is one of the big topics in our ERBE CDT, which Brian is going to talk about soon. So to wrap up, I just mention, name check here, our successful PhD students, as it happens this year, 3 from UCL and 3 from Loughborough. And I add those to our wall of fame, where I list, as I do every year, our successful LoLo PhDs, add their picture to the gallery, and increase a few more theses to the thesis stack. Interestingly, in this 6x6 matrix, there are precisely go on to work outside of academia, and those that have are indicated in italics. And we have graduates working in government, MHCLG, Ofgem, other think tanks, Chatham House. One student has set up his own spin-out company, another works for Mitsubishi, and very many of our graduates now work in research organizations, either independent research organizations or universities. So that's me finished, and I'm happy to pass on to Brian, I think, who's going to talk to you about the ERBE CDT. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Kevin. Can you hear me?
Yeah, all good, Brian.
Great. And I'm delighted to be here. It's a great pleasure to speak to you all today, and I do look forward to the interactions, albeit differently in this virtual context. But please do send in questions, comments throughout the day using the chat function, as Michael has pointed to. This is really a celebration of a number of things. Kevin has celebrated the 11-year contribution from LoLo, and I'm going to talk about the 1-year celebration we have from ERBE. And firstly, to say what an absolute joy it is to work on this project. We're very fortunate, I think, in terms of the management team we've assembled, the academics we have, the supervisors and the lecturing staff. The industry partners, a critical part of the ERBE Centre for Doctoral Training, and of course the students, without which we wouldn't have an ERBE. So that's the first thing I want to say, is what an absolute pleasure it is to be involved. What I'd like to do is introduce ERBE to you in terms of the as you can see, it started in 2019, and we have a program of work up to 2027. We have a great bunch of students, as you can see here from the photo, all smiling, and this is from the one of the site visits associated with the block week towards the end of 2019. And I've highlighted our mission here. As Bob pointed out, there's a huge requirement for leadership. There's a huge requirement for trained expertise if we're to achieve the energy transition that's required in order to tackle climate change and many other challenges that we face. We can't do that without new, innovative, creative experts. And you can see here, I've highlighted in red a number of things. Our target is to train 68 leaders. The expertise really builds on the LoLo strengths in buildings, but adds a few dimensions to it in terms of the integration between buildings into the full energy system, the need to increase flexibility and resilience, and increasingly important, the people part. The homes of the future need to be affordable and healthy. So we've a very ambitious mission, but we've a great team in place, and based on what I've seen from the students we've recruited, we're in a great position to deliver on this. I want to just reflect on the journey from LoLo to ERBE. Kevin gave a lovely overview of the recent progress, which is part of the success story that is LoLo, with a strong focus on development of expertise in energy and buildings, and how we reduce energy demand, and through insulation, through the energy systems we use, through the practices. And effectively with ERBE, one of the things that we're trying to bring to this winning team of UCL and Loughborough, the contribution from MaREI, among the contributions from MaREI, are a focus on factories of the future and intelligent energy efficiency in industry. So to look at not only homes, but also energy use in manufacturing and in industry. And we have some living laboratories, such as from the picture here, you see a pharmaceutical factory in Cork Harbour. And we've helped them with their energy efficiency, but also to integrate renewable electricity into their energy mix. And we also have a significant focus in MaREI on the supply side of the energy system. And you can see 3 smiling researchers who focus on renewable gas research. And renewable gas, there's a very strong increase in interest and activity in using hydrogen as a way to be able to accommodate the fluctuations associated with the growing amount of renewable electricity. So that systems perspective is very important, and the industry dimension is also important. But we're very clearly, with ERBE, we're standing on the shoulders of giants in terms of what's been achieved and is being achieved through LoLo. In terms of the themes that we're focusing on within ERBE, this gives, in a sense, a summary of our focus over the next number of years. So I've mentioned flexibility and resilience. I've mentioned technology and system performance, and also comfort, health, and well-being. I won't read through all of these. I'll let you have a look at them. But essentially what we're seeing is that each of these elements independently is a very important part of the overall solution space, but also it's the integration of these different elements. And we see some of our PhD students at the intersections between two or more of these three areas. So effectively, we're looking at the whole energy system, not just the energy use in the building, but what's actually providing, where is that energy coming from? The people piece in terms of comfort, health and well-being, critically important in order to address energy poverty on the one hand, but also as we make changes that we do so in a way that's, that benefits people. And the technologies themselves and the system performance, new progress required in those areas. And here's where our first highlight comes from, which is the PhD students that we've recruited thus far. I think they're all smiling, which is a great sign. And what you can see is that they're spread across these three different themes, some of which in the individual elements and others at intersection points. And I've also peppered in here just some examples, just 6 examples of the PhD student titles, just to give you a sense of what we mean by these themes. Because when we were developing the proposal, we had ambitions in terms of the themes, but the rubber hits the road when we actually engage with industry partners, recruit PhD students, and the projects start. And you can see from this some of the range of topics, from societal engagement, thermal comfort, smart heating controls, and ventilation strategies. So a range of technology, but also socio-technical dimensions. The second highlight is the 2 block weeks that we've run. And these have been hosted by Loughborough University. The first one was a physical in situ block week where we visited Loughborough and had a great week, including this site visit. And the second one was moved to a virtual setting. And of course, COVID has been very challenging, but we've really, I think, responded well. And again, the smiling face is one indication of that going well, but also the feedback we've received from students, and you'll be hearing from students over the course of the day. So it's great to see that despite the challenges we're facing, that we're able to move towards a digitalization strategy that helps us to cope as well as we can. The third highlight, this goes back to December, and this again was a very good example of collaboration where a team from MaREI went over to UCL for a socio-technical workshop. And as you can see, some of the methods that are used here are non-traditional for engineering, but very important in terms of the getting an understanding of the societal dimension of the energy transition and of energy resilience in the built environment. And again, the feedback was very positive, but it shows a very nice aspect of the collaboration. The fourth highlight is just one of our students got an award, even though the students are at their early stage in terms of PhD. I was delighted to see that one of our students got the best student paper in a conference of the Civil Engineering Research in Ireland conference. So congratulations to Orla. And the final highlight I'd just like to point to is our website, which is the web link is there. And I would encourage you, if you haven't, to go through it and navigate it and get a deeper sense of some of the activities, the focus, and as is shown in this one, our perspective on equality, diversity and inclusion within ERBE. So in terms of the future, there's 2 quotes here. One related to, which is very apt, it wasn't associated with the pandemic, but it's apt, I think, in terms of the current times we're living in. If we can winter this out, we can summer anywhere. And the second one comes from Henry Ford, whose grandfather came from Cork. And I think this captures some of the essence of ERBE from my perspective. Coming together is a beginning, staying together is progress, and working together is success. Thank you very much.